Middle of the week, it is orange and blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason talking about tackle. The Broncos picked up as a UDFA. He is affectionately known as Frank the Tank from the University of Wyoming Cowboys, baby. Now with the Denver Broncos, one of the most intriguing undrafted players they picked up this year, Mace.
Yeah, just like last year, one of the most intriguing undrafted players they picked up was Alex Palczewski, the tackle out of the University of Illinois who spent the season on injured reserve. You bring in Frank Crum, tall, 6'7", blonde locks cascading out of his helmet, cuts a unique profile. And you want to find out where he can go. I mean, you like the size, you like the power that he has, you like the length that he has. I think there's some refinements to his game. Remember that he did allow 20 pressures last year, according to the Pro Football Focus data. So there's room for him to grow.
Yes, room for him to grow, but that athletic profile is there. And when I went to Wyoming's Pro Day to watch Easton Gibbs, because I really thought the Broncos were going to get Easton Gibbs. Seattle got him? Is that right? Seattle? Yeah, Seattle got him.
Yeah.
So, okay, they didn't get Easton Gibbs, but as I'm there in Laramie, Mace, and I love when this happens. I love when this happens on film, and in person, it's even cooler because I'm watching Gibbs, and then I keep noticing this tackle like doing drills, and I was like, big man shouldn't move like that. And I knew from the combine and the hair and everything, but when I noticed his movement, I was just like, oh my God, that big a man should not be able to move that fluidly.
Yeah, it's an athletic lump of clay that you're seeing if you can mold into something. And the Broncos, you talk about kind of putting their money where their mouth is. The two largest guarantees given out to undrafted rookies this year were to Blake Watson, who we're going to talk about later on this week, and Frank Crum, who we're talking about today. Tells you how much they valued him. And oh, by the way, this was the negotiation that took the longest of all the undrafted players. Most of them were done lickety split there at the end of the draft. Frank Crum, that process took a couple of hours before the Broncos could feel good that they had a tackle to come in and compete for one of the depth spots on the roster.
Yeah, Sean Payton talked about Frank Crum at the press conference after rookie minicamp. Here's what Coach had to say.
Yeah, he had traits. He was, I think, the last recruited free agent we signed. It took us probably 2 hours. We were all ready to go home. We kept turning to the scouts and Streef, like, where are we at with Crum? And but he had traits that we liked: toughness, intelligence. We thought he had good feet and some versatility. Those were the things that stood out.
Talks about the traits, talks about the feet. Can't coach the feet.
Yeah.
Quick feet, light on your feet. That's what you need to be. So there's a lot of technical refinement I think that Frank Crum could use, especially in terms of pass pro. But I'd like to see where he is in 2 years. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking a path for Frank Crum here. It's probably practice squad. I think we can kind of be honest about that.
Sure.
That year one's probably practice squad for Frank Crum, unless he kind of sticks there. Really, his path to the roster, it's probably going to depend on how good the Broncos feel about Matt Pert and Alex Palczewski in particular. Because let's take Palczewski, right? If you feel good about him being a swing tackle, even though he hasn't played in the regular season yet, then it gives you the freedom to maybe sneak Crum onto the 53 in that same spot that Palczewski had last year for a day, then going on injured reserve. And it may look something like that even as well with Frank Crum, depending on how healthy he is coming out of training camp. But if Palczewski has come along to where you say, all right, we feel we can trust him as a swing backup and trust him to start if need be, then you don't necessarily have to keep a Matt Pert on the roster. Of course, they signed him from the New York Giants as a free agent, right? So that's something I think that kind of bears watching in roster construction. It's not necessarily about the player. It's about the overall kind of fit. And if Palczewski hasn't come along, you probably have to keep Pert on the 53 because you want someone experienced, and then Palczewski takes that last spot, and then it probably is practice squad for Frank Crum.
Yeah, and Frank Crum, the common thread here, and Payton just said it, smart, tough, love his feet. And I know T'Vondre Sweat, who I had as the #1 defensive tackle in this class, he said the toughest offensive line, and he's in the middle, granted, but he said the toughest offensive line that Texas faced was Wyoming. Crum was the leader on that line.
Yeah, that's very telling. That's very telling. You know, I think you were nerding out a little bit when Crum was sort of talking about kind of the mentality that people in Wyoming have, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, you know, you're a Wyoming guy yourself.
Work hard, play hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
And actually, he feels like he's in a pretty good spot culture-wise as well when it comes to fitting what he values as you're a Wyomingite, right? If you're from Wyoming.
Yes, I believe so. And I'm lucky, Mace, because I get to claim both, because I had a Wyoming phone number and a Colorado address, because our house was on the state line. It was 20 yards inside Wyoming, but our cornfields were in Colorado. Our feedlot was in Wyoming by 20 yards.
Yes.
So I get to claim both. But Crum, talking about the Broncos vibe, let's hear from Big Frank the Tank.
You know, I come from Wyoming. It's, you know, gritty, blue collar, and I can really feel the vibe is the same here right now. So I've really enjoyed these first 2 days and, you know, just learning and doing what I can do right now.
Gritty and blue collar. Yes. But, you know, and both his father and grandfather played for the Wyoming Cowboys as well. So
third generation,
you know, roots in Wyoming run deep, third generation football player. I mean, he definitely does have that blue collar kind of work hard background. That it's going to suit him well, because they're going to break him down and try and build him back up. There are going to be days where he's going to want to dog cuss the coaches. That's just how it is. A lot of what Sean Payton does is he's trying to test his guys, but it seems like Crum is prepared for that test and what they're going to throw at him.
Yeah, he's built for that and built to work under Zach Strief, and he's working every day. Again, Frank the Tank talked about it in the locker room.
Yeah, you know, every day, you know, you got a couple things you can work on. You can't overdo it, and you know, there's probably a million things that I could get better at, and so just honing in, and, you know, the guidance from Coach Strief and the vets here, hopefully in a few weeks, will be the driving force in what to get better at.
So let me ask you this. When you watch Frank Crum, Cecil, what do you think he wants to get better at? What do you think they'll tell him? Okay, as far as this is what you got to work on.
He's a tall guy, so he lunges, and a lot of tall guys do. Tyler would do it when he was a young player. Like, you're so tall, you have to really reach to get those pass rushers. Sometimes it's best just to cushion them, kind of stay with your feet. Don't be you want to be the waist bender, not the knee bender. Like, you want to make sure that you're doing things properly. And I think that's what Crum will be working on the most. And what's the common thread here? He just said the same thing that Franklin and Nick said. You know, one play, I got one thing and then I work on the next thing. Like, dude, all of these guys are saying the same thing.
The step in front of you. Focus on the step in front of you before what's beyond there. You can just take it to any number of maxims that you want to. Walk before you run. Crawl before you walk, right? However, it's interesting. It's very process oriented in an environment that sometimes doesn't allow you for you to have the patience necessary to be process oriented, right? The Broncos, though, they're actually in a spot where they can let the process play out with a lot of these guys, right? This year, the last few months, we've seen tear down and the start to build back up. And building up requires kind of step by step by step.
Not going to do it in a day.
No. It's a reminder that this year might be rough, but it might involve taking some very necessary steps en route to a destination that long-term hopefully has you as a sustained contender. Not all these guys will be a part of it when it happens, but at this moment, you've invested in them to see whether they can be. And we'll find out about Frank Crum soon enough. I almost view Crum and Palczewski as a package here because the progress of the two of them may have a lot to do with what your decision is when you get to next offseason and you're probably moving on from Garett Bolles. Of course, he's in the last year of his contract.
Sure.
Do you have a viable internal option that you've developed at tackle, or do you say, no, we got to go use a premium draft pick? Because right now I'd say if I were thinking what's the most likely position for the Broncos in round 1 next year, I'd say tackle. But if you see what you like, kind of like the Broncos see enough that they like in Alex Forsyth, Luke Wattenberg, to where the only center they bring in to replace Lloyd Cushenberry is Sam Mustipher, who basically is your veteran insurance policy in case your young guys aren't healthy. So what type of tackle are you bringing in next year? You're saying we have to make a premium investment either in free agency or the draft? Or do you like where Crum or Palczewski go to where you say, oh, you know what? One of these guys can handle it. Let's see where they can go. That's what this year is about for Frank Crum, is kind of taking those steps to see if he can be viewed as a starter at some point.
And Crum certainly emphasized in the locker room, like he chose the Broncos not because of the proximity to Laramie.
Yeah.
And he went back on saying that a couple of times because he was asked, like, hey, it's pretty cool. He's like, yes, it is cool, but that's not why he choose
Nice.
the Denver Broncos. Here's Crum on being an undrafted free agent. And again, when some guys get there to the end rounds, they'd rather be a UDFA. Here's what Crum had to say.
I'm not sure I said it, worked out better. The situation for Denver is awesome. Like Coach Streif, a great guy to learn under, and Coach Payton, all the values that they got going on here, they align with me. So that played into the decision.
Values that align.
I like that.
We'll hear more in the next few days as we get to know the rookies, but that was something that came up a lot, not necessarily in the word values, but guys kind of buying into the culture. It really is about culture fit in terms of what they're trying to build around here. And I think they would take a player who maybe is a tick lower in terms of overall measurables if they fit what they're trying to do culture-wise more. And I would argue that we saw enough manifestations of that culture to where that was a huge reason why you were talking about the Broncos winning 8 games last year rather than 5 the previous year, because they showed a toughness to battle back. I mean, they were 1-5 and they battled back. They stole some games at the death. They did win at the margins more than they had been. And I think a lot of that had to do with the culture and learning what it takes to actually succeed and win in the NFL.
Well, what it takes for us to succeed on YouTube is your help. So, Mace, as we're out of here today, how do folks help us out on YouTube?
By liking,
comment,
sharing,
subscribe,
and hitting that notification bell
so that you
never miss a vid.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT is a BFD. Thanks for watching. Remember, coming up at 6 p.m. Mountain, we got our schedule release show live. Andrew Mason and myself talking about the Broncos schedule. That's coming up at 6 p.m. Mountain. So thanks for watching this. Stay tuned at 6. As always, stay frosty.